Hello, and welcome to Living a Graceful Life. I'm your host, Denise Medved, and I am also the creator and founder of the Ageless Grace Brain Health Program worldwide, which is in 50 US states and 30 other countries. The purpose of this show is to remind you that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life that you want to live. Doesn't make any difference what your demographics are, your location, your job, your career. There are certain things that we're in charge of, and that has to do with our body, our mind, our emotions, and our spirit. And we can choose those things that nourish us, that help us to thrive, that help us to have a more elegant and graceful life. I'm talking about the grace of navigating through life and through all the ins and outs of life. I'm talking about the elegance of movement as we travel and move through our days. And that's why we have a great topic for you today that can really help with that. And it's called Little Changes for Big Impact. So it doesn't always have to be a dramatic, huge, big thing that you take on. It can be something small, and you might be surprised at the impact that will have on the quality and the pleasure and the grace of your daily life. So I'm honored and pleased to welcome our guest today, who is Maribeth Bevis, and I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm happy and honored to be here, Denise. Thank you.
I've known her for quite some time, and she is one of our Ageless Grace trainers who trains other people to be educators and teach the Ageless Grace programs. And those are done in retirement communities, memory care, assisted living, skilled nursing care, senior centers, universities, even in hospitals where they offer special wellness programs to the public. And Maribeth has taught at many, many, many of those different locations. So I want to tell you just a little bit about her before we get started. And I have some notes here. So if you see me look down, I'm looking at those notes because I want to include it all. She's done a lot of great things. Her background is in teaching, and so of course she's a perfect certified Ageless Grace teacher as well. She's certified to teach kindergarten through eighth grade, and her specialties are in language, reading arts, talented and gifted children. She spent most of her teaching career teaching seventh and eighth graders, and I bow to you because I remember when my stepchildren were seventh and eighth grade. So you are a courageous woman.
They're my
Uh,
favorites.
she left the teaching profession in 2000, but after a few years, she found herself longing to teach. And so in high school and college, she always excelled in music and dance and theater. No surprise, as you'll get to know her on this show. She was the least likely person to end up teaching fitness, so she thought. But it was a case of stepping out of her comfort zone and trying something new, which, by the way, is the key to stimulating and activating the five primary functions of your brain. Trying something new, stepping out of your comfort zone, getting out of the box. So 12 years later, here she is still teaching senior fitness and loving every minute of it. Her certifications include AFA Group Fitness, which is the American Fitness, and what does it stand for?
A
Ama-
fitness in a row.
Fitness and Aerobics Association. Thank you. I knew that. And also, she's certified to teach Ageless Grace and to be a trainer. She's certified in Zumba, Yoga Fit, and several silver sneaker certifications. But she's told me that her favorite class to teach was Ageless Grace because she's actually witnessed dramatic improvements in people that have experienced these changes, small but with a big impact in their lives just from participating in her classes. So, welcome again, and I would love for you to tell us just a little bit about some of the different places you have taught and also about what inspired you to talk about little changes for big impact.
Hey, well, thank you, Denise. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Um, First of all, change has been a recurring theme in my life. And the first time I really, when you're young, you don't really think about it too much because you're curious and you just naturally go with the flow and try new things. And then we get older and we get a little more inhibited, I think. But when I was in graduate school, actually, when I was teaching in the classroom, I was offered the opportunity to join the Administrators Development Academy at the University of Cincinnati. And it was an honor. It's a graduate program and it's paid for. So I said, sure. Now it's a sacrifice because you're giving up your summer to do it, and teachers love their summers. And I looked at the curriculum the first day and I noticed there's a 6-week class on change. And I thought, oh my gosh, shoot me in the head now. What are they going to talk about for 6 weeks about change? What? This has to be the most boring class in the world. And it turns out it was life-changing. Haha, no pun intended, but it was life-changing. I learned not only how it applied to education, but how it applied to our lives and how important change is, and how, whether it's an organization, an institution, or an individual, if we're not changing, we're stagnating. And if we're stagnating, we're going to die, we're going to wither. And that change is so important. And I also learned a lot of key things. Little changes are more likely to be permanent. If we start with a little change and gradually work toward that bigger change, then we have a greater chance of permanent change. And that makes so much sense. If we think about the abrupt change we all experienced in the last 2 years with COVID, everybody was like, oh, it was hard. It was hard. Change is hard. But if we take baby steps, then we can make impactful change and things can be long lasting. So that was one thing I learned. The other key phrase I learned, and I use this with my seniors, and I used to use it with my dad because it's like a magic phrase, and that is, what if just for today we try this? And it's not saying, oh, I'm just going to change this permanently and you're going to have to adjust to it. But if you can just say to someone, well, what if just for today we try doing it this way? And then we'll talk about it and see how you feel about it. And that opens the door. Most people are willing to say, all right, for today, I'll just try this one little thing that you're asking me to do. And that opens the door to other things. So that's one of my little magic phrases that I'm sharing with everybody, just for today, if you can remember that. And it works so well with my dad because he missed my mom because she had passed, and he was he had health issues. He couldn't be as active as he was used to being, and he was resisting a lot of things. And I would use that, just for today. Could we just do it this way? And
That's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. I love that. I can see how that would actually work with all ages, not just an older person. And I know you mentioned your dad now in reference to him, and Mary Beth and I have shared stories about getting the privilege and the honor of being a caregiver for one of our parents or more parents. I cared for my dad and my mom, and I think you may have too. And so I'd love for you to tell us just a little bit about that and how it impacted your life to be his care provider.
it was one of the hardest things I've ever done because it's very hard. But it was also an experience I would not give up for anything. There's not enough money in the world that someone could offer me to give up that experience. Um, just to share, he was a World War II veteran, and so he hadn't really shared a lot of what happened or what he experienced, and I got to know him better on a different level. Seeing him through the eyes of an 18-year-old that had never been away, grown up on a dairy farm, and all of a sudden he's in the South Pacific.
Wow.
And he's a Seabee, and he's got a gun slung over his shoulder, and he's fighting and building things at the same time. And so I got to experience that with him, and we actually bought a map of the Pacific, and put it on the wall. And I was able to download all the log from his battalion in the Seabeats. And so
Oh,
every day we would look at the log and he would say, okay, well, this day in 1943, I was on this island. And I would say, oh, let's find that island on the map. And we would find that island and he would tell me a story about something that happened there. Um, so
that's such a beautiful and precious thing for you to have been able to bring out of him and to have shared with him and hear about yourself.
yeah, so if I wasn't his caregiver, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And sharing those experiences then also made him more willing to cooperate in his care. And as a caregiver, there's nothing worse than having someone you're caring for that refuses to cooperate in their care. It can be, ugh. But just having those experiences together really helped us have a different relationship. So just a lot of fond memories. And you know, one day he told me this was not the plan. I was supposed to die first. Your mom was supposed to go second. And you know, and I said, well, that's not God's plan. So you know,
Oh,
just for today, let's dwell on what we can do to make today better. You know, you just have to go with the flow every day of what crops up. But I wouldn't trade any, and even the hard days I wouldn't trade, because every single day as we were doing something difficult, he would say, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have you to take care of me. So
very, very sweet stories and sweet memories. And I know that you also have trained people in the Ageless Grace program who are caregivers. And do you have any kind of advice other than your wonderful magic phrase about, well, how about just for today, that you would give to people who are either personal, private caregivers for their family and loved ones, or who may be doing this professionally? Because I know that you have worked with a lot of professional caregivers and given them the tool of ageless grace.
my advice would be just to jump in. I didn't know about Ageless Grace when my dad was ill, and my dad had COPD, and he, like your dad, Denise, was always very active. He was always building things and doing things and outside, and all of a sudden COPD, he couldn't breathe well enough to do those things. But I knew the importance of movement because I was a senior fitness instructor, and he would say, "Oh, here comes the general," and I would wait. I'd be having him do bicep curls. I'd strap the ankle weights on and have him lift his legs just so he was using those muscles, and he understood the value of it. But how wonderful it would have been if I'd known about Ageless Grace, because we would have had fun. He was very creative. Um, Enjoyed all kinds of puns and things, and he would have enjoyed all the creativity involved in Ageless Grace. We could have had some great adventures. um, so don't be afraid to try it and be willing to be silly. You'll be surprised at how much they will buy into it, and they'll be silly right along with you, and you'll laugh and you'll have some of those good memories, um, instead of the hard memories. You know, you need those good fun memories to get through the days. So don't be.
Absolutely. In working with seniors myself and teaching the Ageless Grace program, I see how willing they are to do something that's silly or ridiculous. I might think, I wonder if they're going to do this, and they jump right in and they want to do it. They want to have fun. They want to play. They want to enjoy their days. I agree. Would you describe a little bit about Ageless Grace and how you have used it in CCRCs, which are continuing care residential communities, which usually have independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing care, and memory care all under one roof in a beautiful community. I know Maribeth has worked in several of those. And how you've used Ageless Grace and how you would describe it to anyone who's watching and might not really know what it is.
Okay, good question. Well, first of all, CCRCs have just a wide range of people there, and wide range of abilities, and a wide range of disabilities. So you never know what is going to come into your room, and you have to be prepared to accommodate everybody. Probably the saddest thing that I've seen in a CCRC, and I even questioned some of my clients about this. I would walk in and I had to walk through this one. I had to walk through the whole facility to get back to the multi-purpose room, and through the edge of the dining room. And every time I came 3 days a week. I would see the same people sitting in the same chairs, watching the same TV show every day, every day. And so one day I asked some of mine that came to class, and the people that participated were from I might have had one or two that were late 70s, but most of them were 80 to 101.
Wow. Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. And it's an impressive group. And so one day I said, what is this? I see these same people sitting, and they said, that's all they do. They get up in the morning, they eat breakfast, and they go in to they find that chair that they sit in, and they laugh. They said, and pity the person that sits in their chair, because they make them get out of their chair. That's where they're going to sit.
That's my chair, right? That's my chair. Excuse me.
In the common area, and they don't want anyone in their chair. They sit, they watch TV, they get up, they eat lunch, they come back to their chair, they watch TV, they get up, they eat dinner, they go back to their chair, and they watch TV, and that's their day. And it just cycles over and over again. And how sad. So I did my best, and I was able to draw a few of those in just by encouraging, hey, you want to come play with us today? I learned that's another key phrase. Don't use the word change. Change has a lot of negative. We need your marketing skills. We need to rebrand change because it has a bad connotation. So I used to use the word adventure. You want to come have an adventure with us? We're going to play and we're going to have an adventure. You want to, and everybody's like, okay, I'll have an adventure with you. Let's go. But that was the thing that always struck me walking back through the building, and I would kind of make a mental note. Oh my gosh, they're sitting in the same chair. Do they sleep there at night? You just wonder. One of the best stories I had, and we've talked about this in Ageless Grace, about those neural pathways that we use over and over and over again until we're on autopilot. And one of my groups at the CCRC that I taught at had been doing Ageless Grace for a while. And I said, well, I've got to share with you guys a good story about taking an adventure, not changing, but taking an adventure. I said, and they all knew I was in Ohio at that time, and I drove from north of Cincinnati into the city several times a week. And to do that, they knew the interstate I had to take because they're all familiar with that. And as I would drive it, I would have to cross the highest bridge in Ohio. And I mean, it's high, it's up, and it's long, and it's scary. And you look over the edge. My mom used to, when she was still driving, by the time she got to the other side, she was going like 90 miles an hour just to get off the bridge because it's so big and scary. So I would have to cross that bridge. And then about 10 minutes later, I would arrive at Kings Island, which is a huge amusement park over to the side. You could see roller coasters, and they have a replica of the Eiffel Tower. There's all kinds of stuff there. So I was sharing with the group. I said, I drove to Cincinnati the other day, and I was driving along, and all of a sudden I looked over and I went, oh my gosh, I'm at Kings Island. I crossed the big bridge, and I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember crossing the bridge. I don't remember anything. I don't know how I got here because I had driven it so many times. I was on autopilot, and I had just done it. And this is scary. I'm on the semis, and I don't know where.
How did I get here?
I told them, I said, so I decided I'm going to take an adventure. I'm going to take the next exit, and I'm going to get to where I need to go. And I'm going to use different roads that I've never used before. And I'm going to shake this up because I can't drive this way. So I took that exit, and I didn't know where it was. I drove into an office park and thought, okay, this isn't right, and turned around. And I just kept going until I found an intersection that I recognized. Like, oh, ta-da, I know where I am. But the minute I pulled off and had to start navigating, I felt my brain wake up.
Right, right.
All of a sudden, I'm aware of my surroundings, and oh, what is this? And I had some little adventures. I found a beautiful nursery that had all kinds of flowers and stuff. And I thought, oh, I have to remember where that is. I want to come back and visit that sometime. But I made it to where I needed to go. And I woke my brain up. And so I challenged them. And this is the interesting part. This is one of the things I did with them. I challenged them. Well, they all said, well, that doesn't apply to us. We don't drive. So, that doesn't make any difference. And I said, all right, I challenge you to take an adventure. I said, tonight when you go to dinner, if you usually turn right to go to the dining room, I want you to turn left. And if you usually turn left to go to the dining room, I want you to turn right. And I want you to report back what happens. And
Awesome.
so the next time I came to teach, I said, okay, I want to hear about your adventure. How'd it go? And I was so tickled. I laughed so hard. One, Dottie, who was 98, she said, well, she's like, I got so lost. I had to knock on a complete stranger's door and ask, where in the heck am I? And where is the dining room? And she said, she just grabbed my arm and said, well, come on, I'm going that way. We'll walk together. And so she kind of made a new friend, and that's good. Another gentleman said, well, I got lost, but I was afraid to ask directions. But I saw a group of 5 or 6 people. They looked like they knew where they were going. So I just followed them. That's a riot, really funny.
Right.
Somebody who had a villa that had to walk like across because they weren't in the main building. So they had to walk outside, said they took a different route to get to the dining room, and they found a nest of ducklings.
Oh,
And they were going to visit the ducklings. They had kind of adopted this duckling family now, and they were kind of curious. Are they okay? And that's a lovely thing. But I think the most wonderful thing that happened, we had a fellow, Don, who was very much a loner. He had lost his wife. He had lost his only child. So he had no family, very much alone. And he said, well, I took your challenge and I walked the other way, and I found myself in a hallway that had all this artwork that residents had done. And he said, I started looking at it and I thought, I've always wanted to paint. And so he said, I found Latasha and I signed up for the next round of art classes that they're offering.
oh, see, that's wonderful. What you did with just one simple challenge, right? Amazing, amazing. And of course, we mentioned earlier that one of the things that actually stimulates your brain is attempting to do something new. One of the quotes that Maribeth gave me when we talked about doing this show is she said, that thing that you fear or feel you're just too old to try to do that. So that's what it's about, doing something new, something different. When we were little children, we literally, from the time we were born until our late teens or early 20s, we were constantly doing something new because we didn't know how to do anything when we were born, basically. So we were learning to walk. We were learning to see if we could hop on one foot or skip, or we were learning to see if we could throw a ball to someone else and they could catch it. We were learning to see if we could jump rope or throw a frisbee, and then more complicated things like riding a bicycle or maybe even later on driving a car. And those are the things that cause neurons and brain cells to fire because the brain's trying to figure out how to do this. It's something new. And so it engages, just like you said, when you got off that route that you have driven so many times and you were on automatic pilot. The minute you pulled off, it's like, where am I? I've got to pay attention. I've got to look. I've got to notice things. I've got to read signs. And suddenly you're engaging your brain because you're doing something you don't normally do. And it's physical. It's a physical act driving the car, just like it's a physical act learning to ride a bicycle or learning to paint because you took the left turn in the hall instead of the right turn. Those things are very important to everyone of any age, but they're especially important, as you said, to people who think, well, maybe I'm too old to try that. Do that thing because that is what will stimulate the brain. Absolutely. I love that you put that challenge out there to them and that so many good things came of it.
And
Uh,
that's that little change with a big impact. That's just a little change, turning left instead of right. And by the way, Don turned out to be a wonderful artist. He would draw little pictures and paint things. It was like teaching little kids again. He would say, here, I painted this picture for you. And he would bring them to me, which is just so dear. It's just wonderful that, just that little bit of change opens the door to so many other things. The other thing I was going to bring up about change that is your expertise that I thought about, Denise, kind of off track, but not really, is feng shui, and how you've taught us how just changing things in your room changes the energy, changing how we wear our clothes changes the energy. And, maybe you can add to that, but it's true.
eh, Change, it small changes they really do make huge impacts. So feng shui is the art of arranging space around you. You can also arrange your clothing, your your jewelry, whatever, but arranging the space for the flow of space to go through your living room or your kitchen or your dining room or whatever room you're arranging. And also to arrange it in such a way that it's pleasing to you. When I first began this show, Living a Graceful Life, I talked about the Latin roots of the word grace, gratia and gratus, which really basically mean pleasure or pleasurable. And it also means a gift that is given to you. Grace is a gift that is given to you that you didn't ask for and that you didn't have to earn. I mean, it just happened. So that's what feng shui, when you arrange two or three things on the top of a table, or you say, oh, I think this painting might look good over here. And of course, you can always change it back and say, well, no, I was wrong about that. I don't like it there, but maybe it'll look good over here. Those little things, you don't have to redecorate the whole room, but what Maribeth is talking about, that one small change, then I can go into that room for days and say like, I really like the way this looks now. Or I'll sit in this room and I'll say, this feels better now that I move those three things or put that painting over there. So that's something all of you can do, is make small changes in your life that can make a big difference and can give you much more pleasure, much more joy and grace. And would you describe just a little bit about how you share Ageless Grace when you go to, and what it is, because a lot of people may not even really know what we're talking about, what it is when you go to a retirement community or a senior center and you're sharing Ageless Grace?
If I'm sharing with like the activity director and trying to convince them that they need a class, I've learned that the key is to say, would you like a brain health class? Would
Yes.
you like to help your residents improve their cognitive skills? And of course, yes, of course,
Yes.
to improve their cognitive skills. So it's about improving our cognitive skills through movement. And we know that we don't improve our cognition through reading and working puzzles and all of that, that we are meant to move. We are meant to move. And I saw a thing from, I think, Margaret Mead about, they asked what was the first sign of civilization. And she said it was a femur that had healed. And they asked her to explain more. And she said, because if in those days long ago, if you couldn't move, you died.
Ah.
You know, you were you either died of starvation or you became lunch for some other creature. But she said the sign of a healed femur meant that somebody stayed behind and took care of that person. And that was a sign of civilization and caring. So moving, you know, that proves to us moving was essential.
Absolutely.
You didn't move, you died. Basically, you couldn't get water, you couldn't get food, you became likely prey for something. So I try to explain that, how movement is so important. And we know now that probably the reason humans have brains is to tell us how, when, where, and why to move. That's the initial purpose. And so as we become this sedentary society that sits in front of a TV or in front of a computer screen, we're denying our brain that movement. And a little bit of it kind of withers and dies because we're not doing we're not fulfilling its purpose when we sit still. And sometimes I tell them, and this is not exercise, this is play. We're going to play, we're going to laugh, we're going to have fun, we're going to be silly. And I promise you, you're going to leave and you're going to feel better. And we do, we laugh, and I can, you know, it can be someone who, we had one lady, bless her heart, we've lost her. She was 102 and she passed away. She was, but she was just grumpy. She was just, and which she, you know, she would come late and everybody would kind of say, well, maybe Phyllis isn't going to come today, you know, and then she'd come tripping and everybody go, oh, you know, but then within a few tools, she'd be laughing and lightening up. And, you know, I always wondered what was so heavy in her soul that made her so gloomy the rest of the time. But after we would do a few tools and we would be silly a little bit and laugh a little bit, she would be laughing and playing along. So it's not only our physical motion, which it certainly is. We move a lot in Ageless Grace. There's 21 tools, each one targeting something different. We're awakening our brain, getting all 5 functions of the brain going, but we're also feeding ourselves emotionally. We're also finding joy. And that has so much to do with aging gracefully. If we can find joy in our life, and even the directors at the facilities would say, you know, they're in such a better mood when they take your class.
Right.
The rest of the day, they're just easier to deal with because they're in a better mood. They're happier. And so that's
Play is very important. I mean, I always kid around and say, I've read the rule book and nowhere does it say we're supposed to stop playing. It doesn't say that. We just sort of made that assumption. We thought, oh, I need to be poised or mature or professional or whatever the word might be that we substituted for playful and childlike. There's a big difference between childish and childlike, and that's definitely what we do in Ageless Grace. We're childlike. We're opening up to that state of wonder and that state of being willing to, I call it taking risks. And that sounds dangerous, but it's not dangerous at all. It means, saying, I don't care if I look silly doing this. I don't care if I look like I haven't done this before. I don't mind if I look awkward or clumsy. And when you open yourself to that, as you well know, then you really start to enjoy being who you are and expressing your own spirit. I always say that this program, this episode is about body, mind, spirit, and emotions. And we all have our own spirits and they need to be nourished. And one of the things that nourishes us is playfulness and laughter and joy and having a good time. So you're right. That is key. That's a basis, a foundation for living a joyful graceful life is aging gracefully, is having some way to access joy and laughter and fun and play.
and then they gain confidence. That's the other thing. Because I would tell them, like, balancing act is one of our tools, and we would talk about that. And I would say things like, well, I was with my 7-year-old granddaughter, and my granddaughter would come to class occasionally because I would be watching her, and they always love that. I mean, they love children. So they knew Brenna. I would say, oh, the other day I was in a parking lot with Brenna, and we got to one of those parking bumps. What do you suppose that she did? And they'd say, oh, she stood on it and walked. And I said, yes, she did. I said, she didn't know she was practicing her balance.
Right.
She just saw it and did it. I said, you know what? The next time, I wouldn't encourage you to get up on one of those, but could you walk the line in the parking lot? Could you do that? And they said, well, yeah, we could do that. I said, you could practice your balance just like kids do, and have some fun, be silly with it. And they said, okay, well, we'll try that. Just making that connection between, this is what you did as a child. Can you do that as an adult, as an aging adult? Can you find some way to reconnect with that and have that fun? And they get the confidence to do that once they have a few adventures.
Right.
They
Right.
see, hey, that wasn't bad. That was kind of fun, and I'm doing something new and interesting, and I'm making new friends. Then they have the confidence to get out and try other things. So I do have to share with you, and one other dear thing that happened at the CCRC. We were doing express yourself, and express yourself is about using our upper body, but we also mimic different jobs. And I had one gentleman who was a World War II fighter pilot, and he was almost 100. He was 97, 98. And I said, David, could you help us be fighter pilots today? What was it like to be in that cockpit? And his whole demeanor changed, his whole demeanor. And he led us through what we had to do if we were in the airplane. It was so cool and so fun. And later I knew his daughter, and she goes, thank you for doing that. He talked about that for a couple of days, how fun that was to have that experience and share it. And she said that was just a really neat thing. So a lot of ways that you get to know them better. And they get to share their experiences with the group, and then they feel good about themselves. So it's cyclical. It just kind of builds and builds. It's that little change, little adventure, big impact.
Absolutely. Well, what a difference it makes when we can engage older adults, especially, but and say, what did you do? Who used to, swim in high school? Do you know any dives or any swimming strokes we can do? Who used to play a sport? What sport did you play? who used to have a hobby. What was that hobby that we could do, like painting or playing basketball or whatever it might have been, and engaging them and getting them to tell about themselves and their lives and share in that way really makes a difference. Whether it is someone like Mary Beth who's actually teaching and has a whole class in a group, or whether you're the person who's interacting with your mom, or dad, or your aunt, or some other family member that really would appreciate you drawing them out and getting to them to share some of their experiences. And of course, we act them out in Ageless Grace. He didn't just tell them how to be a fighter pilot. I mean, he said, hold the pull back, like, looking to adjust this, turn this knob, pull this. So we act it out. And some of you've heard me say this before, but it's a fascinating fact. It's in the book. The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. And it says that he did many, many MRIs of the brain. And he said it turns out that imagining that you're doing something versus actually acting it out and doing it, that you're actually doing it, light up almost exactly the same parts of the brain. I thought that's fascinating. And of course, what we do when we're teaching older adults and working with them on Ageless Grace is we actually tell them to imagine it and act it out as if they were really doing it. So they're sort of getting what I would call a double whammy. They're getting the actual physical activity, and they're getting the imagination of the brain, seeing it and figuring out how to do it as well. So
And I share with them along that line to kind of highlight that. I read a book by John McCain, and somebody had asked him, "How did you survive being a prisoner of war? How did you mentally survive that?" And this was interesting. He said, "I played a round of golf in my head every day at my favorite golf course."
wow.
And I think that's fascinating. That kept him healthy. He in his brain, he was at the first hole and he was swinging. And I just, how fascinating it would be to be able to see brain scans of what was really, but you have to believe that that kept him mentally strong, that
Yeah.
imagination that, okay, I'm going to take a break from all this horrible stuff and I'm going to go play golf in my mind, in my imagination. I
I
find that
had
fascinating.
It is fascinating, and you're right. It would be really, I'm sure, that had a lot to do with his actual strength and resilience. Everything comes from the brain. I mean, the brain produces proteins and hormones. It produces emotions. It produces so many different things that we don't realize sometimes how important keeping our brain healthy is. And one of the ways to do that is, like Mary Beth said, is doing something different. Do it differently. Take a little adventure. I love that. A little adventure. That's much better than saying risk. It is a risk. We feel like we're taking a risk that, oh, am I going to look silly? Is everybody going to laugh at me if I pretend to do this or act like I'm doing this? But the reality is that is what makes a true difference in your brain health. No matter what your age is, by the way, this is true whether you're 45 or 25 or even 5 or 7 or 8 years old. We also teach this to children too. Have you done any playing of this with this imagination and the games and tools with any of your grandchildren?
Yeah, Brenna loves Ageless Grace. She's my most likely to go on an adventure with me. She doesn't question anything. If I say, "Oh, we're going to be dinosaurs today," okay, Grandma, on the dinosaur today. She doesn't. That's the beauty of children. They don't question anything. She'll go on any adventure I pull her into. So, oh well, she loves Ageless Grace. I loves it.
Absolutely. Well, I always say that it's never too late to begin doing things that will strengthen your brain, but it's also never too early to begin doing things that will strengthen your brain. Um, we, a lot of people of all ages are concerned about losing cognitive function as we age. It's now become the number one concern in the planet, the health concern, more so than cancer and more so than heart disease. And it's because so many of us, I'm sure every listener knows at least someone, if it's not someone in your own family, who has Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. It's prevalent in our society today, and that also means that our 20-year-olds and our 30-year-olds know someone, if not several someones, and it means that our children know someone who has cognitive decline. And what they don't know is that there's something they can do about it, that we can actually play and figure out how to do things with our body and cause neurons or brain cells to fire and cause our brain to be more active and functional. I had not heard that story about John McCain, and I really immediately get that that is probably the main reason he was able to not only survive but thrive and continue positive thoughts and hope and belief, because he was more or less, whether he completely realized it or not, he was training his brain to
And
overcome.
in those happy
Yes.
endorphins and the dopamine, he was releasing that through his imagination, probably. I mean, we don't know, but we can kind of maybe think that that's what was going on as he was just
Absolutely.
imagining. So very interesting.
Um,
Um,
you know, you know my friend Dana, who we have lost her on this earth, but she lived to be a ripe old age of 94. And she always would say to me, I tried being down once and I didn't like it, so I'm just not going to do it
I
anymore.
love that.
Uh, and that has a lot to do with what we talk about, that you have choices. You have choices. You have go to class with Maribeth and laugh and enjoy yourself. You have choices to go on an adventure or to turn left instead of right. You have choices to be able to take a little bit of a risk and do something out of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go skydiving right away. That's okay if you do, but you don't have to do that. You can simply, take a different route, or maybe brush your teeth with a different hand than you normally do. There's so many ways to do this, right? You were going to say another story that you had.
Like that my veteran Ageless Grace people that have been with me for 3 or 4 years, they take it outside the classroom now. And I have one lady in particular, Jane, who was an elementary teacher. So she's really plugged into the playfulness and how important play is because she taught first grade. Um, but she'll find ways throughout the day. And some days she'll come to class and she'll say, I was saying bad things about you. Did you hear me? And I know she chose an adventure. So one day she came to class and we know that she does her grocery shopping Friday mornings before she comes to class. So we always say, well, how was grocery shopping? And that's when she said, I was thinking bad things about you, Mary Beth. And I said, what did you do, Jane? She said, well, I went on an adventure. She said, I went through the grocery backwards. And it was horrible. I couldn't find anything. She said, it was so crazy. It was like they moved everything, but they didn't. I was just going through it the opposite direction. And so it's interesting that they now look for ways that they can mix it up because they know it's good for them, even if they're aggravated. But they know it's good for them. And so that was just one example of them outside of class, totally unsolicited from me, saying, okay, I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to go through the grocery backwards. You'll have to try it.
Well, I was just gonna say, as soon as you said that, I thought, wow, I'm gonna see if I can try that. I always, maybe most people do, because that's kind of how they have the grocery stores laid out. Like most grocery stores, the produce is right there on the right when you come in, and so we kind of go that way and we follow the aisles. That's what they want us to do, right? And the milk's always way back so you have to go through the whole store if you want a gallon or a quart of milk, and the frozen section's in a certain place. But I love that idea. That's one I haven't tried yet, to stimulate my brain by saying, I'm going to go over here and start on the opposite side of the store. And maybe even because I follow that pattern of down this aisle and up this aisle. So I might go back to the back and then come up this aisle and down this aisle. Like, what a fascinating thing. And those of you listening may be thinking, well, how can that make a difference? Try it. When we do something that we're just doing almost automatically, it comes so easy to us. And only a small thing, when we change it and do it differently or backwards or in a different order, can suddenly cause our whole brain to say, like, what is going on? Why can't I get myself together? Why can't I find where this is? Because it's on my left now instead of on my right. So I can imagine myself in that situation. Next grocery store trip, I'm gonna try that. But these are the kinds of things, when Maribeth chose this topic, little changes for big impact, that we're talking about, that you can make a choice in your own life to do something a little bit different. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, and you can make a big difference in your brain health overall by doing that a lot. Now, obviously, if once a week you brush your teeth on this side instead of this side, and then you don't remember it for 2 more weeks, to make a big difference because it was just a short thing. But if you do it regularly and you stimulate your brain on a daily basis, you really start to see a difference. Have you seen a difference in yourself and your own cognitive function?
Definitely. Definitely. I took a month off. We recently moved. You're in my new backyard. Recently moved to San Antonio, and I gave myself a month off to get settled. And I saw, like, I felt the change because I wasn't practicing. I wasn't doing daily practice. We daily practice for 10 minutes a day, for those of you listening, as well as teach class. So I definitely was more forgetful. And I'm trying to unpack and put things away, and couldn't remember where things were, and I'm kind of scattered. So I pulled myself back in and said, look, even if I'm not teaching right now, I need to at least go back to practicing every day, so I could sharpen my skills up again, because I could tell I was, yes, definitely. There's a huge difference, huge difference.
That makes sense to me. I notice the same thing. Even when I don't do it for just a couple days, I start to see a difference. And for those listening, you don't have to do the Ageless Grace brain health program. You can do the things that we're just talking about, taking a different route to work when you're driving, taking that. This is just an interesting study, and I may have told you this before, Maribeth, but they did a cognitive study of London cab drivers, which I think is interesting. And they found out that they had higher cognitive function than most average people in the entire world. And they figured the reason is that on a moment's notice, they don't know where they're going. And then somebody says, and then they have to figure out how to get there. Because London isn't like New York, where it's laid out in a grid system and these roads go north and south. The numbered streets go east and west. The named streets go north and south. It's nothing simple like that. It's like turn here, go there, wander around. It's a very old city. And they said, and not only that, but then they run into obstacles where they might come and, there's a parade going on and they have to go another way and they have to think, well, what's another way I can do this? And how can I turn and how can I go around? But I thought that was fascinating. And then the other thing that I think is fascinating is that the longest lived profession in the world is orchestral conductors. And they live an average of 98 years. That's huge. The reason is they're doing physical movement that they have to think about at the same time. And that's what it is, that you have to be doing something physical, not just mindless. It's good for your body, especially if you're on a treadmill, but it's especially good for your brain and your body if you're thinking about what you're doing. And so, needless to say, when you're doing these things like driving a cab, or you're doing things that are new to you, your brain is engaged in saying, well, how would I make my left hand be able to do this? And what should I do with my right foot? And the brain is giving signals all the time telling us this is something new, let's figure it out together. It's a dialogue between the body and the brain.
I know we're probably getting close to finishing, but I wanted to share. I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Charleston at all. Are you familiar with Stephen Charleston?
Yes, tell us.
He's just wonderful. And recently, one of his posts, if you can indulge me to read it here.
Explain who he is so that the
Okay.
listeners will know who he is.
He is a Native American from the Choctaw tribe, and he lives in the Oklahoma City area, but he's also an Episcopalian bishop. Um, and he just writes wonderful things. He's retired now, and he blends his Native American spirituality with his experiences being an Episcopalian priest and bishop. And he just writes these beautiful things and just synchronicity. Just a few days ago, this was one of his posts. And I thought this is just a good time to share this. He says, spiritual life is transformative life. We are not made to stand still.
Mm.
We are made to move, to change, to grow. In each of these ways, we are being constantly renewed. The divine plan for us is not that we be created with curiosity and imagination and then put it on a shelf. We are designed to be active in transforming reality, even as we ourselves are transformed by it. Faith is dynamic, not inert. It is how we take our part in the process of creation. For us, becoming never ceases and discovery never ends.
Wow, that's very powerful and very beautiful. And yes, he couldn't have put it better at a better time than what we're talking about right now.
So it's our bodies moving, it's our minds being occupied, it's our spirituality growing, it's our emotions, it's all of us. It's holistic. It's not just, and that's what's great about Ageless Grace. It's not just, oh, I'm going to do a bicep curl, which is mindless. It is mindless. But when we're doing Ageless Grace, we're pulling it all in. We're pulling in the emotion, we're pulling in the movement, we're pulling in all of it. We're encompassing everything, the whole human being. And that's what I love about Ageless Grace. That's what you've created.
Well, one thing that I would love for you to tell our viewers is about why we do Ageless Grace sitting down, because we haven't really explained that, and that we've never said that, so they don't know that. But we do all of Ageless Grace in a chair.
Well, that's a great thing for a lot of reasons, and we do it without any tools, we don't use weights, we don't have any equipment we have to use. So first of all, if we're seated, we're engaging our core. We have to sit, and we're engaging our brains because we're going to swim. We have a tool called Dive In, and when I tell people we're going to swim in a chair, yes, we are. And our brain has to figure out, how do we swim when we're seated in a chair? Okay, well, we'll figure that out. We'll swim in our chair. So it engages our core, it gets our brain going, and it levels the playing field. Virtually everybody can do this. But I will tell a CCRC story about doing it in the chair. I had a little lady, Peggy, who it was some kind of crazy wheelchair. It wasn't a regular wheelchair, but she came faithfully to class and she always laughed. Just a really great, fun person. But I forget, I think we were doing rock and rockettes where we kind of kick our legs and stuff. And I looked back and she's sliding down in this chair. I mean, she has a seatbelt on hers, but she's sliding, she's going. And so I said, oh, time out, time out. I went back and I just wrapped my arms around her and I said, oh, Peggy, I just want to give you a hug. Can I just hug you for a few minutes? And I looked over and someone said, I'll get help. And someone had to run and get someone to help me get her back up in the chair. So normally we can sit in the chair, but we do have to be mindful and watch. But those are the reasons that we do Ageless Grace seated, because everybody virtually can do it. Our core gets a good workout and our brain has to work and figure it out. Did I miss anything?
Absolutely no. When we're seated, and this is true even if children do these brain games that we play, that they sit in a chair. And when I work with children, I always say, only one rule to this game we're going to play. You can't get out of your chair. You have to all do it all sitting down. And they're so cute because they get so excited and they'll jump up and then they'll say, "Oh, oh," and then they sit down real fast. Because we're not used to, jogging in our chair or swimming in our chair or dribbling a basketball in our chair or any of the things that we might come up with doing, pretending that we're landscaping a garden and using different tools. We have to imagine that we're doing it and we have to act it out and we have to have figure it out, like how would I use a rake or a hoe if I'm sitting down? How would I climb a ladder if I'm sitting down? And so that immediately engages the brain. And that's the kind of thing that you can do on your own. Something that is out of the normal, something that's a little different. And there's some obvious things where you could maybe walk up the stairs backwards if you have stairs in your home, or you could pretend to do something on your right side when you normally do it on your left. And I always say to people, just change things that you do daily. For example, I open the cabinet and my glasses are up on this shelf, and I use my right hand and I reach for those glasses. And it fascinates me when I say, okay, now I'm going to open the cabinet door with my left hand and reach for the glasses with my left hand. And it's like I think, why can't I do this very well? And it's because the brain and the body haven't worked together to create this particular activity. So anytime you come up with something a little different, a little out of the ordinary, you might be surprised how all of a sudden you're really thinking about it, and your brain is really engaged. Thank you for that beautiful reading. I really love that, what he had to say about how we were designed to move and we must move. It's so true. And so what I would love to do is do a tool of Ageless Grace to show it to you right now so that you see what we're talking about. I do one in every episode every week toward the end of the episode because we've been sitting. We've been sitting and listening and talking and having a conversation, and it's time to move. And remember that too when you are on Zoom or when you're watching television or if you're working from home on your computer. How long has it been since you moved? Because the brain is just focused on one thing. The rest of it's going to sleep. So it's important for us to be able to move and say, okay, every 30 minutes I'm going to get up and move, or every 25, or whatever feels right for your body. But we all know that moving is critical. And that's true of children too. They need to move. They can't sit all day and listen and participate in class fully unless they actually move. And just a few minutes, what you said, little changes for big impact, just a few minutes can cause you to feel wide awake again, or alert, or more focused. So what I'm going to do, Mary Beth, and you do it too, and I'm going to invite our viewers to do the same thing. Back away from the screen a little bit, and I'm going to sit in that chair right back there, and I'm going to show you a tool that Mary Beth selected at the beginning. Oh, let's do grab bag. So grab bag is for dexterity in the hands and fingers, and maybe even in the feet and toes. So go to your Goldilocks chair, which is the one that is just right for you, and we're going to put on a little music because we do all of our Ageless Grace tools to music, because that's one more layer of something that stimulates the brain. We also do it barefoot. Those of you who've been following my episodes know that I'm always barefoot when we do this show, because there are 7,000 nerve endings in each foot, and 7,000 nerve endings in, and that's all part of the central nervous system, which is the brain. The brain is in charge of the central nervous system and the spinal cord. So if we're barefoot, we're not weight bearing. It's perfectly safe for anyone, whether you have neuropathy, neuroma, neuralgia, edema, any of those types of things. You can be barefoot when you're seated, because all you're doing is gently stimulating the feet. So grab bag is just about what it sounds like. We're going to grab and close. But Mary Beth, I steal ideas. I shamelessly steal ideas. And she said at the beginning that she just did what I'm about to show you to do in her class this morning when they were doing grab bag. So this is how we're going to start. I'm going to put on a little music. And we're gonna have a pillow fight. So use your hands and throw pillows. Let's pretend we're having a big pillow fight. And maybe you're even dodging some of the pillows and using your hands. Yeah, and throwing the pillow. I'm gonna get you, Maribeth. Here it comes right through the Zoom screen. Throwing the pillows. And then what happens when you throw feather pillows? All the feathers start flying out. So now we're gonna catch those feathers in our hands. Catch them there. The air is just full of feathers. Now, just because it's something different and it will stimulate our brain, I want you to see if you can catch a few feathers with your toes. Oh, there's one over there. Whoops, what about that one? Catching those toes. Catching those feathers. Now, if we were kids, we'd say, let's have some more pillows so that we can get some more feathers in the air. We wouldn't be thinking about the fact that we might be using all the feathers out of our mama's feather pillows, right? We'd just be having a good time. So throw them around, shake them up a little bit. Use your hands to hold on. Use your fingers. And then let's catch. They're all over the place now. They're down here. They're over here. And you're going to have to move pretty fast to catch all these feathers. Grab, grab. And grab a few more with your toes. Good job. Thanks and I don't know about you, but I feel a lot better already just from moving around and feeling like I really kind of energized myself. So if you want to know more about Ageless Grace or any of these tools, you can go to agelessgrace.com. We have a free class you can download, free handouts. There are also playbooks and DVDs and flashcards, and there's a training schedule there. It says training and it says schedule, and it tells about seminars you can take, and Maribeth is one of the people who offers those 4-hour seminars, and also certifications you can take for 14 hours if you would like to learn to teach this program yourself or just learn more in depth. So you can also go to winwinwomen.com, and those products are on there as well that can help you. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind you one last time, it's never too late to begin to make choices that to live the life that you want to live, and little changes can make a big impact. Thank you, Maribeth.
Thank you, Denise.